Coming to you live from the Park Hyatt in Toronto, Ontario, it's Rob Has a Podcast, and now, here's the lady who's definitely not Rob. It's Jessica Liese. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Amazing Race wrap-up for this episode 9 of The Amazing Race, and I am Jessica Liese, and you will notice there is no Rob around, and with me I've got two other very handsome guys. We are here, dancing around and singing for our Zloty. Rob is, of course, indisposed this week as he is off attending to the birth of his second son. Everybody should shout out congratulations to Rob. His kid came into the world yesterday. He's a adorable little thing with a squished face like all newborns. His name is Anthony. So congratulations to Rob and Nicole for that. But for tonight, we have a special triple stacked recap of Amazing Race. Please welcome to the show. You know him as the man who spent the entire summer recapping Amazing Race Canada with me, Mr. Dan Heaton. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Jess. I am thrilled to be on the Amazing Race US fun podcast for tonight.
Yes, the grown-up Amazing Race. And also with me, you know him from many, many Rob's Podcast installments, including several instances of Amazing Race recapping, as well as Last Comic Standing, Celebrity Apprentice, and a bunch of stuff for post-show recaps. The one and only Mike Bloom. Hello, Mike.
Hello. I'm sending Rob a package on behalf of all of us. I'm wondering, should I send Kugel or latkes? Aren't they the same thing, apparently?
Apparently they're the same thing.
I don't know what that lady was talking about.
Yeah, I guess the popular guess was that it was a potato kugel, so maybe she's like they're both made of potatoes, but still they're not the same thing.
No, not at all. So, I mean, for those that are not familiar, a latke is obviously, people typically know it's a potato pancake, or as James Earl calls it, a hash brown, I guess is a more common way of saying it. Kugel is more of like a casserole that's usually made out of something like noodles. I feel like this is like, I could probably handpick like a handful of legs I'd be really good at on The Amazing Race. Between like playing the piano and identifying Jewish foods, I feel like this was my wheelhouse. Hopefully, I wouldn't five-hole it.
Yeah, I don't know, Mike. You didn't know what a babka was.
You know what? I hadn't watched Seinfeld at that point. So I just finished watching the one with the black and white cookies. So now I know what the babka is. Now I can retcon myself during our Orphan Black recaps.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so we're in Krakow, Poland this week, and so I guess before we dig into the episode, I want to get a sense from you guys of what do you think of the season so far?
I like it pretty much. I would, early on I was kind of down on this season. I felt like it was so focused on the drama between the Green Team and Team Texas, and it was so much on that conflict that I wasn't sure was there, but I feel like they found their stride. Like I watched tonight and I'm like, I like all these teams. There's even teams that bicker or whatnot, I feel like I know them pretty well, and I don't always say that on this show. I wouldn't put it in the top tier so far, but I feel like especially for a season with one team just dominating, it helps I like that team. But I found that I'm enjoying it more as it's going along, though I still wish they would do a little more with the tasks and try some different things. But overall, it's been pretty good.
I would call this like a notch above middle of the road right now. I feel like this is the perfect law of averages season in terms of like season 25 was fantastic. Season 26, I think it had some redeeming qualities, but it was probably a little less to be desired from. And this is like straight in the middle between the two. I think, like Dan said, I think the course for me is kind of detracting. I mean, this episode tonight, for instance, I feel like there weren't too many things that created fun moments. The teams themselves, I mean, I think I agree with Dan that I think we're developing some personalities from them. I don't know. For me, it's just hard to really glom support onto like a team outside of Mother Boy, to be honest. So it's hard for me to really like find a vested interest in these teams, and that's kind of detracting a little bit from my opinion of the race thus far.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I think we've got a great cast and like a C+ race course. So it's all like sometimes one makes up for the other. And I think this is one of those weeks where we had the cast was definitely the star of this particular installment. I don't think the tasks were anything to write home about. That's the sense I get.
No.
No, but Krakow, Poland. We haven't been to Poland in several seasons. The last Poland leg I can remember, and I know we've had at least one since then, was season 11 All Stars, which also, funnily enough, involved a piano.
Now, was that the leg with? Was that the one that had like the intersection where they had to like make the sausage as well, or am I thinking of like Austria?
That was like the week before, I think.
Okay.
Because maybe they had a double leg in Poland, but they had the one there. They had to tune a piano, and there was a guy dressed as Chopin, and the beauty queens were hitting on him as if he was Chopin.
Oh yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, and then the other half of the Detour, they had to X-ray a mannequin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but it was all right around the same time as the sausages, because I believe Team Guido is still in it at that point. And Charla and Mirna, toting that giant mannequin all over town. Yeah, so this didn't have any fantastic moments of mannequin toting, but the piano, it was all right. How would you guys have fared? We talked a little bit before the leg about this particular selection of tasks, and how do you guys think you would have fared at the mine or the music?
I think I would have done okay. The thing about the music task is that it looked like it was about your piano playing, but it was really about moving that piano and then about begging for money. So it was kind of like they presented it a different way. But the mind task I would have done okay. The food task, that would have been where I would have just failed completely, because I would have just run out to someone kind of like Justin, though not as smoothly, and been like, "Tell me what this is. I don't know anything." And they would have looked at me like I was stupid. But that would not have been my high point of my race.
Yeah, I think I agree with Dan. It's tough because I feel like music was meant to be like, oh, you don't have to haul this salt. Come, just play some music. But then also push this rickety piano through the streets. I mean, I feel like I would slight towards music, not only because I'm more musically inclined, but like when you do theater, you move these rickety set pieces around all the time that I feel like you're used to holding shoddy things together while moving them through precarious situations. Also, it seemed like the mine was further away than the music in relation to the Schindler Museum. At least Logan and Chris finished their task pretty reasonably, and they fell down to like 5th place by the time the Roadblock came around.
Yeah, that's true. And you have to imagine there's probably not a mine underneath the streets of downtown Krakow.
Yeah, you never know. They love their salt, right?
Yeah. Just another day in the salt mines for most of these teams. It seemed like that piano task. We've seen tasks like this before where they say it's about one thing and it's really about something entirely different. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it was, you think, I'm going to do the one that's not the brute force, but, oh, hey, there's some brute force, and also it's begging for money, which is, I don't know about you guys, this is my least favorite type of task.
Which one?
It's up there. The begging for money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because it does require them to talk to people in the city, which I like tasks that require them to talk to people. But I don't know if I like tasks where they're basically, it's not even about, no one really paid attention to how well they were playing the piano. Like James Earl was a great piano player. It didn't really matter. But so, I don't know. Really, the task was begging. And while I appreciate that they don't have to beg after they have a non-elimination leg anymore like they had for a short time, this, I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I like when they talk to people, but I wish it was for some other reason.
Yeah, and I noticed like they weren't even asking for money in the vicinity of the piano. Like especially in Tiffany's case, like she was running like a block away to get money from people.
Yeah, I wonder if that was an act on the producer's part of like after a while they realized like, oh, maybe the spot we picked to busk really wasn't the best. I feel like the dancers were in this task. They would kill it, right?
Yeah.
That'd be like their first place. I feel like we're writing a lot of history now of like had the dancers continued past that one leg, apparently they do extremely well at every task of the race hereafter.
Yeah, well, I don't have internet on my phone right now, or I would hit the fan fiction button.
Yeah, exactly. Let's write a history where Ernest and Jin win Amazing Race 27.
Yeah. Well, apparently they're going to win. Apparently Ernest is going to win American Ninja Warrior, so we got that coming up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that guy loves going on TV. It's his favorite thing. Yeah, so, and my other beef with these Poland tasks, and yeah, there was a asking for money task the very last time they were in Poland in season 23, because there was the human statue thing that they were doing, and even then it was kind of like, these people probably have less money than the rest of you on balance, and you're getting them to support this American TV show that's, its life is fine, it doesn't need the money.
Well, I don't know. Depending on, the stunts they're pulling now to cast their future seasons, I think the production team might have pocketed all the money that they got from this task.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely gonna get there. I also want to let you guys know we got the chat room up and running, and there's a robust conversation going on in the chat room right now. You can go to robswebsite.com and click on the link to go to our current podcast, and there's a chat room embedded right there on the page. You can also tweet questions at us using the hashtag RHAP, and a little bit later on we're going to get to some of your questions about the episode. So I guess the other thing I want to talk about is we gotta dive into Justin and Diana's reign of terror here, because it seems like there's not much that's going to stop these guys, and they are a very polarizing team. I think nobody seems to be neutral on Justin and Diana, is my sense of it. And I think here on the podcast we kind of love them, but there are people saying, yeah, I'm never going to watch the show again, I'm done on this season, and they say it every episode, so I know they're not really. But what do you guys think it's going to take down Justin and Diana, and can they take down Justin and Diana?
I think it's going to take them to make a mistake. And it could happen. I mean, we saw cracks the last few weeks. This week they were helped a lot by the fact that they had the flight ahead. So we don't know if they really destroyed it more than anyone else. So, but I don't think the U-turn's going to do it. It may knock them back a little, but I think they'll survive. I think it would have to just be a task that they screw up. And you never know. It could happen. I don't see one of these other teams now as, I mean, even, Joey and Kelsey maybe, but I don't see one of these other teams as just so much better. But I think right now it would take a mistake at least for them not to make the end.
I would compare Justin and Diana right now to, if I can make a historical comparison, to Andy and Tommy from season 19. If you remember, there was a very similar storyline going on where all these teams were talking about, we can't beat Andy and Tommy, and it took until that final four leg, and I think it was Mexico or some country in that region, where the other three teams just kind of ended up teaming up together to form a coalition and kind of block them out. And I know that was tried again unsuccessfully in season 21, but I feel like we're sort of aiming towards that territory, especially when you have teams like the Cheerleaders and Team Texas helping each other out tonight. And, we even saw a little assistance between Kelsey and Joey and Denise and James Earl. So I feel like all these other teams are forming these close relationships, and Justin and Diana have kind of, alienated themselves on the outside, and that might come back to bite them when, if they are all bunched together, these other teams might decide to work together, and Justin and Diana might be out in the cold.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of that, especially just because they're so far ahead, they're not making those bonds. In fact, I have heard that on this particular leg, they had already checked in at the mat before the second flight even landed. So. Wow. This was one of those situations. It's very similar, I think, to the leg in Denmark where the cyclists in season 25 landed hours ahead of everybody else and checked in and got first place, and they tried to make it look close, but you knew it wasn't. I mean, to the credit of the editors, they did not make this look close.
Or when Colin and Christy got, 24 hours ahead of everybody in Egypt when they caught that super early flight and then took the fast forward?
Yeah. Yeah, Charla and Myrna having to wait around because there was terrible weather in Mozambique, and the camera cuts to clear blue skies and no wind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every so often, and I think it's interesting to me because you don't see this happen very often anymore, and I think in the earlier seasons that happened a lot, where one team would get so far ahead it wasn't close, but.
It's weird because they only were ahead by an hour and 20 minutes in terms of if we assume they arrived at the right time. So if that's the case, these were really fast tasks. Like these teams, even if they went slower, we're talking an hour and a half for the whole course pretty much besides the beginning. I guess that's not that abnormal by the way the show runs.
Yeah, it also depends on how long did the other teams have to wait for a flight.
Yeah, can we talk about for that second and that Travelocity app? I mean, I'm first of all, product placement, holler, but I'm confused about like, did they purposely? Because at this point, I feel like production can sort of extend pit stop lanes however long they want, right? If they, and so they can say like, okay, we'll give it another 6 hours so that there's more flights to check out. It was weirdly staggering in this way, where like it was like, okay, we'll give Justin and Diana the first flight, and then nobody else can get on and can get on their flight.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, I'm not sure. They may have actually. It was either that they got on a flight right away and took off. And I think when you're in Europe and you're flying to Europe, I think it's a little bit easier than like if you're in some random city that's not an airport hub and you need to go to some other random city that's not an airport hub. This was a little bit different, I think. They could get to the airport and get on a flight within an hour. And it's possible that they either got on a flight before everybody else was even, ripping their clue, or the next flight was several hours later and Justin and Diana happened to be the only people to get on that first flight. I don't know which it was. And I'm sure I will be told at some point. But and it was really... It is interesting, the point that you're making, Mike, where they do tend to stretch that pit stop out to a point where everybody can get on either one flight or the other flight, or there's enough to choose from that they're not going to have one team hours and hours behind. So I would guess that they intended everybody to be on that second flight, and it just happened that one team was a little bit better, which is how it's happened in the past.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if that's the case, though, then can production call an audible and make like a bunching point at some point? I mean, I know they race through the duration of the day, so it's a little tough to do that. But I mean, I feel like if you want to make things more exciting, that's like the perfect place to do it, because this really was a leg of like, we're gonna watch Justin and Diana's backs for the entire leg because we're gonna be behind them so much.
Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? Like, this floating pool doesn't open until 2:35 p.m.
I don't know. The pool might have been rented out for another event.
Yeah, the other event is like Phil got there a little bit early and he's having a couple of margaritas, and so you have to wait for Phil to clear out of the pool.
John Montgomery would be like crushing pitchers of beer by that poolside and doing laps around, and everyone would be cheering him on, doing keg stands.
He's like standing on top of the roof of a nearby house, like Billy Crudup in Almost Famous.
Okay, I'm a golden god.
And now my headcanon is like Phil and John, when they're not on The Amazing Race, they like go to random pool parties in the middle of Poland.
Now I have to press the fanfiction button.
Yeah, so I guess they could have shut down the pool so that Phil could have his like John Montgomery pool party, and he's done. He's like, okay, I got to finish my margarita. Okay, now we're open.
Yeah.
We didn't see Phil do that thing that he usually does where he stands in the foreground while the teams are like going to the task.
Yeah,
he did that.
He had that one moment where he did, like, he was in Poland and he was talking about where like Justin and Diana are ahead. So he tried to pull that off, but you're right, he wasn't like in the mine when they showed up. I mean, earlier he was in the mine really enjoying hitting that salt together. But yeah, it was odd. I wonder if they were just all thrown off by the early team.
Yeah, and that just points to, again, I don't think anybody was expecting Justin and Diana to get on that flight. So.
Yeah, so I guess like looking into, well, first of all, I also thought do you think the pool task was like a subtle switchback to Kemi and Carly swimming across the pool accidentally to get to the pit stop?
It would be nice if we had one of those where it was like you can go over land like a normal person, or you can go over water. I would love to see that again. But
yeah, well, they did that in Amazing Race 6, right? Like the season afterwards, for a pit stop, they actually had to swim the length of a pool. And
I remember that. Yeah.
I think it was like a race between Freddie and Kendra and Adam and Rebecca, where of course Adam like completely like flounders in the pool, and they cost them the spot.
Yeah, kicking it old school. That was a 6 is one of my favorite seasons. I mean, apart from the incredibly abusive relationship between one particular team and the casual racism from the other one. But other than that,
it was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, I feel like that's a perfect segue into Amazing Race 6. That infamous leg also featured, the Brandenburg Gate and also the I think when they were, I forget which country they were in Africa, but it was the whole sort of tribute.
They just keep breeding and breeding.
Yeah, there was I'm talking about when the whole in the beginning of the episode there was like the tribute to like the Middle Passage.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Gus breaking down.
Yeah, and I feel like that ties right into this work with Oskar Schindler, and I feel like it's been a while since we've experienced this. I mean, I know last time in Poland they went to Auschwitz, right? So I think they or not last time, but in All Stars they did it.
Yeah, in All Stars, and they made a special effort to get them to Auschwitz too. Like everybody had to take these buses that took them out there, and then they spent like 5 minutes there and got back on the bus and came back.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still like those are great moments that like 27 seasons in, it's really nice to see the race acknowledge like history and these big, grave historical moments, and it is great to as much as the teams are focused on race, strategy, to have everyone kind of stop and pontificate about what a great event this was and how important of a man Oskar Schindler was. I don't know. I really enjoy those moments where everyone can just like take a breath.
Yeah, and it's also like Amazing Race is a three-pronged show. It's a travel show, it's a competition, and it's a reality show. And whenever you have one of those things kind of taking over and not giving the other two things screen time, you get a boring season. And so I really like that we kind of make a nod to the travel show element, because you get too concerned with the reality show aspect or the competition aspect, and it's really not all that fun to watch. So, yeah, let's take a minute. Let's have a serious, let's ponder seriously where you are and what you're doing. I'm all for it.
Yeah, and it was nice because I don't feel like Canada, it seems like for a while every other leg they would stop and say this relates to our history, but they don't do it that often in the U.S. I mean, they did like the John McCain 1-2 and others, but it seems especially recently I feel like it's mostly reality show competition, so that was a nice thing.
Well, could you imagine, though, like, I feel like it's a U.S. thing, too. Like, I think it's very different for Canada to say, like, oh, this is our heritage, versus, like, the U.S. coming in and being like, USA, look what we did in this country, everybody, have some American flags. So I think it's an unfortunate cultural difference that I think the U.S., it's harder for the Americans to sort of emphasize their heritage through these cultures than a place like Canada.
Yeah, it's very much like, and this is something that it's one of the reasons I love Amazing Race Canada, is because they can get away with that kind of, in-your-face patriotism that if we did it in the U.S., it would be very tone-deaf and very obnoxious. But it also, you need that moment of like, hey, we're global citizens here, and, props to everybody for not making out at the Schindler's List Museum. So there's that.
Oh, that's true. I haven't gotten to that episode of Seinfeld yet, but I know that's a reference.
All right, yeah, that's a reference.
Took me a minute, but I got it.
You need to hold up a sign that says Seinfeld reference for me when I do these podcasts.
Yeah, anybody.
I was like, did that happen on The Amazing Race? Oh, wait.
Yeah, in season 6, as you remember.
Right. It was almost to that point.
Yeah. Well, so that happened. This is why I need Rob. I dropped a Seinfeld reference. He dropped one on me last week, and I totally didn't get it, and I heard about it. So.
Oh, the one about the name tags. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do remember the episode of Schindler's List, and honestly, I think if they hadn't had that, I think it would have been a really boring leg. But because these tasks, not great. Location, it's picturesque, it's Europe, whatever. But I think we did need that moment to kind of pause. So. Let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the curious strategies that people were employing at the Roadblock.
Strategies in quotes.
Yeah, strategies in quotes. I didn't look at the whole list. Like, if I'd been at home and had the DVR, I definitely would have paused this list to look at what the food was. But I know there were Hamantaschen on the plate, which are the triangular cookie with the fruit filling.
Mm-hmm.
They had the gefilte fish, which is delicious, and it's a little ball of fish. There's latkes, which are hash browns. There's kugel, which is a casserole. And what else was there on that plate?
I think there was something that had meat on it. I didn't catch it, but there was 6 overall, right? 6 or 7.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna be no help here.
Yeah.
Dan, come on, this is your thing.
I'm gonna go get a drink of water. No.
Yeah. Dan, you're doing this roadblock, man. Come on.
It did kind of suck though that this task, as you mentioned before, kind of became, okay, let's just go to someone and ask, because you saw that was the viable strategy. Everyone who tried to attempt it on, as much as Chris was trying to be guided by his beloved grandmother Dorothy, like it didn't. Everyone who tried it, just going off their intuition at first, didn't really help. You had to just go to someone, look up the pictures, and then you were fine.
Yeah, I did notice that a couple of people guessed blindly on a couple of things, and they ended up being correct.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a viable strategy, I think, at a certain point, like if you know what some things are. But, yeah, and I wonder about the effort to team up. Like, that was the other thing. I really think they should have had different lists. Like, everybody should have had a different number of everything, because teaming up, I don't know how I feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it was when I saw it the first time, I thought that's a good idea. They know they're ahead. James Earl and Kelsey team up. That's great. But you're right. And the other one, well, we'll get to that in a minute, I guess. But you're right that it did kind of. I mean, that's the thing about that task. I feel like it's challenging, but there needed to be one more thing or one more element to make it a really challenging task. Something was missing, and it also wasn't thrilling TV either. But yeah, those last 2 teams, I don't know.
Well, I feel like I agree. There needs to be an additional part of the task. I feel like if all the other like menu tasks typically have you delivering them to the tables, and I think we've seen in the past. I know Amazing Race Canada, they had a task this season, I think, where it was like everyone had I think like we recapped, Dan, where I think they were in Argentina and they were taking different people's orders, and they all had different people's orders because they were obviously different people, and I think that individualize things a lot more. But I think even if they just had people go into the party and deliver them without like dropping the tray, I feel like that would be something. And I think this like was a little crippled by the fact that the pit stop was literally the most claustrophobic pit stop ever. Right in, like, go right through that door and there you are. Like it mitigated. I feel like we could have gotten a lot of tension out of like the cheerleaders versus Team Texas, but it was completely wiped away due to the fact that the pit stop's literally 10 feet away.
So basically, it's a repeat of the first Zimbabwe leg, where they had to, the U-turn sitting right in front of the pit stop, and it completely wipes out any chance that people are going to have any kind of, sense of urgency about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how I really don't like having that pit stop like within sight of everybody, unless there's like an actual skill-based task that people are going to be hammering away at while like Phil and the klezmer band are staring them down. I think that can add something, but in this case it was just like, oh, where's the pit stop? Oh, it's right over there. It's through that door. Whoever gets this done first is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I like it when they do the roadblock and then you have to walk. Like, there's no taxis to get involved or traffic. But I like it when it's like 5 minutes away, or like something like where they had to wear the baskets on their head or whatnot.
Mm.
But yeah, because even you saw that they finished obviously they finished bam bam. If they had to run 50 feet more, it might have made a difference. But instead, I guess maybe they just figured since it was a non-elimination, they were just gonna, oh well, we rented out the building, let's just use this. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we're not using this storage closet here. Let's just shove a 20-piece klezmer band in there and put Phil in there. Yeah, it's tiny room. I don't even know how they got the camera crew in there. But yeah, seriously, and it also, the fact that you had these 2 teams in the back of the pack teaming up, which is a really colossally dumb idea when you're the last 2 teams there. It was almost like you wanted to see them do a thing like when you're quitting the task at the end of the first leg in either season 22 or season 25 5 where they're sitting there like, we're not going to finish this, let's all quit and sprint it out together. But they didn't even have a thing where we're going to help each other and then sprint it out together. It's just like, we're going to help each other because we're pals, and, oh, no, you go first. No, you go first.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I think we gotta.
I mean, I'm going to make a couple of, again, historical comparisons here of how it's never good to be too nice on the race. I'm remembering back to Season 5 again. Dennis and Erica, I think their names were. They were the first team eliminated, and it was because, like, he held a door open for all the other teams, and they were, like, the last to get a taxi right out of the airport, and they couldn't catch up. And the other one I'm thinking of is Season 12. I think it was Shayna and Jennifer. I think the team is a team of 2 blondes.
Yeah.
And there was that Jason and Lorena. I can't like this goat won't milk. I can't milk my milk.
Oh yes.
She was having a meltdown, and she's like, you have to do it like this. And so they charged ahead of them and eliminated them. And so this is again a third way of saying you should never be overly courteous to someone on the race, especially when you know you're the last 2 teams there.
Yeah, I mean, being nice costs nothing if you're at the beginning of the leg. Like, if you know there's, like, 2 or 3 teams behind you, like, why the hell not collaborate with someone? Why the hell not get through it fast? But if there's another team, you got to work on getting you ahead of them.
Yeah, it's weird because partially I look at Tanner and Josh and I'm like, well, they're nicer guys than I thought they were when the show started, but they're terrible racers. Because, I mean, even he had a chance. Like, she was struggling. He could have easily walked ahead of her and not made it obvious, not said, in your face or something. Just slowly walked ahead, said, oh, sorry, and gone up. I mean, obviously they didn't know it was upstairs. I'm sure he probably assumed he could be nice and still win, but oh my goodness, why take that chance? I mean, they just don't seem to have that eye of the tiger anymore. It's like they've gotten beaten down a bit, and they seem okay with losing.
Yeah, in the beginning of the season, I thought it was going to be one of those situations where they were like, you know, the hippies and Eric and Jeremy, where they're like, I love that we're dropping so many old school Amazing Race references.
God. Lots of Amazing Race Historia talk tonight.
Yeah, Rob would not stand for this. This is what happens when Rob goes away. Yeah, it would have been one of these situations where those 2 teams are out in front the entire time and they're fighting it out with each other in this kind of, you know, epic battle for supremacy. And I thought that was where we were going with Team Texas and with the Green Team. And Team Texas dropped to the back of the pack and just, like, all the fight just went right out of them, and it's never come back.
Yeah, they have a problem with momentum, I feel like. And especially, you know, Dan, you were talking about how they seem beaten down. I think this leg really beat their morale down, considering that, like, they had to face a lot of bad luck when they landed in Poland. They couldn't catch a taxi, and I think that really put them in a bad place that, like, even, you know, I think they powered through the salt test, but I feel like had they had the confidence of being out in the lead, they could have, like, pile-drived that salt task and be able to get out. I don't know how well they would do on the roadblock without Tiffany and Krista, but I don't know. I feel like they're definitely an emotional enough team that if something doesn't go their way, like last leg we saw, they took that one, you know, they saw the sights and missed out on that trade, and they beat themselves up about it, and I definitely think that affected their morale and their overall performance last leg.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I like them a little bit better now that I can see that they are emotionally affected by this. It seems like, you know, they care a little bit, and that's refreshing. And, you know, you see a chink in their armor, like, you know, same thing this summer with Amazing Race Canada. And again, Rob's not here. We can talk about this stuff all we want. We had Gino and Jesse, who were this, you know, rock-solid, unbeatable team for so much of the race, but every so often they would drop to the back of the pack and it made them that much more likable because you knew they were capable of failure. And I think this is what I'm getting out of Team Texas now. You know, they're not immortal. They're completely not infallible, and we could see them come back. And if they came back now, it's not like they started at the front and stayed at the front. They had some struggles and they overcame them. I think that makes them much better television.
Right. I mean, I thought of Gino and Jesse because in both cases they're pretty bad at navigation. They seem very confused in other countries. And you find them endearing because they're not game bots or, you know, robots. I think Gino and Jesse were a little better. I mean, these guys, they pulled the Guido move with the sightseeing last week. I mean, I loved it. I thought it was awesome, but not great for racing. I find them kind of endearing. You're right, though. If somehow somehow next week there's a U-turn, or or Justin and Diana go out in some way, or even make the finals and they win, I'm not going to go, oh, another boring two guys bros type win. I mean, it's not my result I want to happen, but if it happened, I'd be okay.
If Tanner and Josh got eliminated tonight, would them letting Tiffany and Krista go ahead of them be the second stupidest move in Amazing Race history, behind John and Jessica not using the Express Pass?
It'd be bottom 5 for sure, or top 5.
I can't think of anything that's worse aside from that Express Pass incident, because that's one of those cases where, if we're using Rob's criteria of like when you are in danger and you're directly not letting it affect it whatsoever, like they knew they were in last place, they knew Logan and Chris had gone ahead of them, yet they still decided to acquiesce and say go ahead of us and risk getting eliminated as a result.
Yeah. I mean, how dumb was it really? Like, I think you have to imagine they thought they would have a little bit more room between them and the pit stop. I think maybe in hindsight it looks a little bit stupider than it is.
I can see that. Yeah, that's true. They didn't exactly know that it was going to be inside the building.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. But yeah, even so, it is pretty stupid, because you have to assume pit stop's coming up. You're not going to have a lot of room to pass the other person. You need every little bit. And it really didn't seem like Josh was at all bothered. He's like, oh no, you helped me, so you go in front of me. And I don't want him to be magnanimous about it, like it's all about relationships and it's more important at the end of the day to be friends with everybody. And like, no, it's not. It's $1 million. But I can definitely, it's not unthinkably stupid. It's stupid. It's not unthinkably stupid.
Yeah, it's like the Linda Holmes thing, the race, and all of that. I thought of that again that you brought up, because, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the dumbest thing ever, because they don't have all the information. But with 6 teams left, and you had to assume it was elimination leg. I mean, you didn't. I mean, I assumed it was, even though there was a voice in the back of my head saying maybe it won't be. But why mess around? It just showed their eye isn't on the ball right now. And the honor thing is what they said in an interview afterwards. During the thing, I think he probably figured it wouldn't matter. Was trying to be nice.
Yeah, can we talk about that? So were you guys surprised to see non-elimination? Because we talked a little bit about the show, but we're looking at season 3, 4, 6, 7 in terms of they traditionally had non-elimination, elimination, non-elimination, elimination right in the middle of the pack. And it feels like we're going back to that very similar leg structure.
Yeah, it has literally been every other leg at this point. It's I was not expecting it this week, because I assumed they wouldn't put another one so close to the other two.
Mm-hmm. Now, do we think there's going to be any more? Because so this was just episode 8, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have 12 legs, so that's 4 legs left. So if we're going 6 down to 5, 5 down to 4, 4 down to 3, do we think there's going to be a Final 4 this season?
We might get one more non-elimination if we're going to have a Final 4, but we could, they like to mix it up. They don't want people counting on it being a Final 4, so we may well get a Final 3.
Yeah, so if it's a Final 4, we're going to get a non-elimination, plus we'll get another one. Wait, no, that's not right.
No,
we'll get one more. Yeah,
there's 4
legs left.
Yeah, if we're having a Final 4, we have room to have one more non-elimination at some point.
Yeah, but if we have
not try to do math on the fly here.
But if we have a Final 3, then a team is getting eliminated every episode from here on out, which should be. Yeah. I mean, I guess of all the episodes for Rob to take off, I know he gets infuriated by the non-elimination leg, so it's serendipity.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's nice that he can work. He could take the whole weekend off through Monday. He doesn't have an exit interview to do with anybody or anything.
Well, that's nice. That's a good part of the non-elimination, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, maybe CBS planned it.
They talked to him. They talked to people. They got it figured out. Yeah. I think with the fact that we're having a non-elimination at 6, I think that makes it more likely we have a Final 4. Because I think that if they were going to do it, they'd probably do it at 5. But now, I don't know. I think 3 in a row, I'd love to see that happen, but I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think it feels like the way they've structured it feels like there's been way too many. It's just another one already again. Yeah, I want some bitches to go home already.
Yeah, we have seen. It's not like, it used to be where, the Amazing Race 3 Final 5, I think we saw for like 3 weeks straight. So
Yeah.
it hasn't gotten to that point yet, but I do feel like on the plus side, we've gotten to know these teams a lot better, but on the minus side, I mean, we've seen, 2 teams go home in the past month?
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
It's incredibly crazy. All right, so is there anything in particular we need to bring up about this episode, on the whole, before we start getting into some listener questions? And of course, I also want to get your opinions on the upcoming season.
Do we want to do like quick? I mean, we have 6 teams left, and I figure we're all 3 of us are here. Do we want to do like super quick power rankings?
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have done it yet this season, but I figured halfway point it'd be a good time to do it.
Yeah, Rob and I did it once, but he always tries to get me to do power rankings, and then I bristle because I'm like, a show where everybody finishes in a particular order at the end of every leg, it's hard to do power rankings, but I think with this bunch it's a little bit easier than most. So yeah, let's go ahead. And why don't you start, Mike? Tell us what you think.
Well, there's a team that wears a certain secondary color that I would probably put as number 1. I mean, it's Justin Diana, number 1 with a bullet.
Yeah.
Number 2, I mean, I would say for me right now, it goes Kelsey and Joey, and then Denise and James Earl. I mean, I think Mother Boy has been they had their lows, now they're climbing up that hill again. But the fact that they've had those lows and Joey and Kelsey really haven't I think that speaks higher towards their position in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Dan? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally on 1 and 2. If you're just looking at this week, I would agree with you on 3. But it's tricky. It's almost like 3 through 6 are really hard to pinpoint because you go back, like Logan and Chris look so bad, and then you say, oh, they look okay. Tiffany and Krista looked great last week, and now they look this week. I probably would have put Tiffany and Krista in 3rd based on where they were heading, like their momentum. But now I'm like they're probably 4th. So
yeah.
It's kind of it's shaky in that 3, 4, 5, 6 range.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's one of those, like, we've got our varsity squad, which is the green team. We got our junior varsity, which is the reporters always, and Mother Boy usually, and sometimes either Team Texas or the cheerleaders. And then we got, our freshman squad. I think we all kind of universally agree that Logan and Chris are kind of bringing up the rear.
No, they're great. They're great TV. I mean, I think
no question.
Yeah, they're definitely dry. They're not on the level of like Terry and Ian or Brian and Cynthia levels of dry, but I mean, I love tonight when Chris was, Logan asked like, oh, what happens if, the mic collapses in on us? And Chris just very deadpan talked about how like it's going to fall on his legs, he's going to be paralyzed, and question the decision he made to go on this race. So I love getting that entertainment element out of them, but man, they are ready to freak out at the drop of a pin in terms of if something. I mean, they had an argument about who should take the roadblock. Like we didn't see that from any of the other teams, and so them having those incendiary qualities is going to work against them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Also, his choice to dump out the wheelbarrow and then shovel everything again showed that maybe they're not all. And even on the roadblock, I was just watching that going, he's going to finish last. When those other teams started to work together, I was stunned that he got it right. So they're not always doing the task that well either. They're almost one of those teams that they finish 4th, and you're like, wow, how did that happen? Like, dumb luck is kind of pushing them forward at this point.
Yeah, and there's always that one team that, they probably should have been out several legs ago, but they keep on having, crazy lucky things happen to them. Like, I would term them, they're like a Chuck and Winona with less awesome hair.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, but I agree that their dry sense of humor is really, it's one of those things I think similar to how the Chacks were for Rob. Like, I pay close attention to them because I know they're going to say something funny that's going to go over almost everybody's heads.
Mm-hmm.
And this week they really brought it, and I'm going to be sad when they inevitably, fall out of the bottom of the power rankings. So, all right, so let's go ahead and start taking some listener questions here. I'm bringing this up. Eric Colston wants to know, were you surprised that the cheerleaders struggled so much at getting the money? I thought they would have flown through that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what, as much as we may begrudge these sort of sales tasks, I mean, this is like, I don't want to generalize, but I feel like this is sort of what the I forget the type that you call it, Jess, like the people who are recruited purposely for being like the attractive young girls.
Yeah.
I feel like this is like the task that they usually excel at, right? Because they can find some ogling men walking by on the street who will be able to shell out some money just to support, young attractive women. But for some reason they were unable to find that this week, which was very atypical, I feel like, on this sort of task. I would have thought that they would have excelled on it completely, but for some reason they really could not find their footing.
I think the piano pushing must have knocked them out of their comfort zone, because it took her a while, and even when she said, "Oh, I'll give them a kiss," like the one guy was kind of like, "I don't really want to kiss. I just kind of want to leave." It wasn't like he was drawn in by this, because she was like crying and stuff and looked very sad. It's not, it was a little strange, So I think they were just, they really struggled, and then they had that thing where the piano fell and like the piano fell apart and like, smashed Tiffany's fingers, and so they were in rough shape. I don't think they were thinking clearly by that point.
Yeah, it's true. I think you can flirt when you're feeling confident and on your game, and that was not the headspace they were in at that point. So, yeah, and I really, like, anytime a crying girl comes up to you and offers to give you a kiss for money, that's going into some dark territory there.
We'll stay out of the TAR torture porn territory.
Yeah, we'll stay far from that. But
yeah, after last time.
Yeah, the last time Rob let me run the podcast and came up with a hashtag that got us all in trouble.
It's a genre.
This hashtag, we're definitely keeping it G-rated.
Yeah.
All right, so it's Jeff TBH wants to know, can Justin and Diana feasibly not make the finals at this point?
Sure. It's possible. And like we brought up with Andy and Tommy, anything is possible. If you asked me to bet money, I'd say they'll be there. But they could fall into that fourth place, I hate to go Amazing Race Canada, Jet and Dave kind of spot or something, where they rock and then they get to the or like Nadia and Natalie had this on their season, where I thought they were a favorite and they went out there. So, I think they'll be there. If they get beat, I think it'll be in the finals, but I wouldn't say it's without question.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that happens as you progress, obviously, through the leg, and this is sort of an obvious statement, but there are less teams there. And so the more mistakes you make, the more likely you are to fall back. If they made a fast-forward error like they did in the first episode, they would have been eliminated, absolutely, this leg. So I think the fact that, if they get to the final 4 or 5, as Dan was pointing out, and they make a couple of mistakes, there's not a lot of wiggle room there for you to be able to still pass people. So you really have to stay on your A game in those legs. And so if they happen to not get lucky or they make a couple of mistakes, they could absolutely be eliminated. But I'm going to agree with Dan and say that's not going to happen at all. I think we've also been getting too much of the storyline of these are big Amazing Race fans, there are super fans. They're sort of the people's champion almost, as much as the people may be rejecting them sometimes. It's the people's champion whether they want it or not. But I feel like that storyline is that's like a finalist storyline. That's very rarely a 4th or 5th place finisher storyline.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I will add that is not a winner's storyline.
That's true. Yeah. I don't think we've ever had a super fan. We never had the equivalent of the John Cochran winners at it, right, for Amazing Race?
Not really. The closest I can think of is probably Dan and Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan was such a huge fan, and his brother was kind of along for the ride, but that was kind of their shtick, was that he was obsessed. He'd never missed an episode, and then the much stronger Cowboys ended up getting beaten at the very last minute by somebody that actually watched the program.
Mm-hmm.
So that raises an interesting question. If they're not getting the winner's edit, if we call it, is another team getting it? Because I'm having a hard time thinking. Because I feel like Joey and Kelsey are getting. Their story is pretty much that whole story again of, we really want to be first. We're going to hit them over the head with the flute. We want to be first. And I don't know. Who else is getting a winner's edit from this group?
Yeah, I think it's got to be. I think Joey and Kelsey are getting the closest thing to a winner's edit. They got some really meaningful quotes last week, especially, and it could be Winter's edit. It could also be the Nick and Matt edit, because we got to go back to that. Will.
Yeah, I mean, I think for every Jason and Amy, there is a Nick and Matt. I would also say I think Mother Boy is having a very interesting edit. I don't think it's like shades of Luke and Margie.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they won, they're one of those cases where it's not exactly a winner edit, but if they won, I could understand where the story was coming from. You know, it's not so out of left Beekman field that if they won, we would have no idea what was going on. But if they won, I could say, like, oh, yeah, they had this whole story about, like, her not accepting him when he came out and them sort of, mending fences over the course of the race. So it's sort of like a results-oriented edit almost that, oh, I guess this makes sense now.
Yeah, they learn to work together over time. It's like, their characters evolve somehow. Yeah, and I could see that, and they've also given us enough of Mother Boy that we would root for them.
Yeah.
And I think I would even argue the cheerleaders have gotten this, like, they had a terrible week this week. They did a lot of really dumb things this week, but they've also, they started out not doing very well. They got really great, and they were feeling confident, and I think you could sell that as they experienced the highest highs and the lowest lows and came back from a terrible setback to win it all. I could see a cheerleaders win, too. That's just me.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think the least likely are Chris and Logan, and even Tanner and Josh. I just don't. I feel like, the way they're being presented, if you said put money on who's going to go home next week, I think they're the most likely. And it's weird to say that, but I don't see them winning.
Yeah, especially like the way that they started out so strongly. It is weird, but I think you're definitely right about that. Okay, so Gary Hogan wants to know, are the Green Team doing so well because of the superfan factor or basic tar skills?
That's a good question. My first hunch is to say, like, why aren't they kind of one and the same? But I think we've had enough interviews with, teams that have shown that super fandom does not necessarily equal great racing skills. This leg, I think, was just good racing skills combined with just a really lucky lead. And I think that I think the thing that they're able to benefit from is not the fact that I think they were able to use their super fandom to fuel their skills almost. Justin said this is something he's been preparing for like 13 years for. He's definitely, to give a Survivor equivalent, he's the guy that's practicing the puzzles out in the backyard, or practicing holding balls on a small board, waiting for people to talk dirty to him. So I think like he's adequately prepared himself by watching the race, and he's actually like utilized the things he's taken from the race to the skills that he's bringing to the show. He's kind of putting his money where his mouth is. Whereas I feel like some superfan teams don't necessarily do that. They know like what to do and where they're going, but they don't usually apply those skills to actual racing skills.
Yeah, it's very true. Nobody has ever approached The Amazing Race academically. Like, the superfans that come on are like, it would be so cool to do this, but Justin's taken notes. He's studied it. He's tried to come up with, he's got his JS rules. He knows what people should and should not do. And I think he's taken it to a level that I'm surprised it's taken somebody this long to do that. But, here we are.
Yeah, and I think, too, where it really benefits them is they seem to do really well with transportation. They just don't. Even when they struggle with a few tasks, but I think his knowledge, he's really pays attention to the mistakes teams have made in terms of getting on the wrong taxi. And you saw the time when she wanted to run and he didn't, and he was kind of mean. He was right that he generally seems to know how to kind of maneuver the course, which is an underrated skill with racers.
Yeah, it's definitely, he always knows what's coming up next in a way that somebody like Texas, who's never watched the show, is going to not be able to do that. Okay, so, before we wrap things up, I really wanted to get a sense from you guys. I'm sure you have been, like me, following this news about the live starting line that Phil will be broadcasting from his Facebook page on Sunday. And we need to talk a little bit, I think, about season 28.
Okay, I can talk about it.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, rather than dead air. I've been watching The Amazing Race since the start, so this comes from someone who it was my favorite show, at least for the first, I don't know, favorite show period for a long time. It's not there now. I still like it. But I don't like when the casting is gimmicks. In a sense, I almost wish they would do more different things with tasks. But I find when you, like we saw with the blind date, which worked okay, or even the last All-Star season, I feel like if you cast a lot of people as a gimmick, it's not going to work well. Now, these people, this group could be very good on the camera. They could have benefits that I'm not seeing. But to me, it feels a little desperate. And I know some people don't agree, but I would rather they try some different things with the formula of the show and cast regular people, which we've seen works. I'm going to give it a chance. I'm not like, I'm never going to watch the show again. But I feel like it just doesn't, and I don't think the ratings are going to get that much better. I am skeptical, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, you and Rob hashed this out a little bit a couple days ago. I can understand on paper where this is coming from, because I think from a pure marketing perspective, if we're looking at the suit and ties over at CBS, they want to bring in a younger demo. Who has younger demos? These big YouTube, Vine, Instagram stars. I don't even know they had Instagram celebrities at this point. That's how weirdly disconnected I am from all that. But I can definitely understand it. The thing is, I'm probably more optimistic than I was initially a couple days ago, because I was looking at the cast list and I realized that, like, it oftentimes, almost like in a blood versus water pairing, is one person is a celebrity and the other person is like their family member or their best friend. And so I'm trying to remain optimistic that, like, you know, if there are camera hogs, if we do have I can't believe I'm invoking his name right now, but if we have Frankie Grande types on the race that are clearly trying to play some sort of character, at least we'll have another half of the team to kind of balance it out as a relatively normal person who's not making their entire living online. The worries that I have are more so from production and editing standpoint. I think because these people are so invested in their audience and their audience is their livelihood, I'm very worried that the editors are not gonna try to edit anyone badly. So we're gonna get like no villains. Everyone's gonna play like a super nice, mellow race, which is not very fun. I always like it. You know, you always like having someone to root against, and I feel like the production's going to have a tough time delineating, like, oh yeah, we should hate these people, because these people have an audience of millions, and you don't want to, you know, turn those people against them. And I also feel like the celebrities themselves are, celebrities in quotes, are also might neuter their statements as well, because they know I'm broadcasting to millions of fans. I don't want to say anything incendiary or too radical, because I don't want to either turn my fans off or turn anyone's fans off onto me. So as long as they don't put a filter over anything they're saying, I'm optimistic that it should be at least an entertaining season. Whether there's some great racing going on, no idea. But I'm going to remain optimistic on this one.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's better than I think it's going to be. And, you know, in fairness, blind date season miles better than I thought it was going to be. So I think also if having the even-numbered seasons be full of gimmicks in a way that kind of boosts ratings temporarily enough to get the contract renewed, and that's the price that we pay to have a good season every other season, I think I'm on board with that. Like, I don't want them to go as far back. Like, I don't want them to slide as far back as they did on season 24, but I can take a little bit of a quality hit if it means we're going to get more good Amazing Race in the future.
Well, so if this season ends up tanking, how would you personally suggest? I would think about making the suggestion to the production team about maybe cut it back to do one edition a year and really focus on making it. You know, that means you have twice the amount of budget. Make it the best race and best cast possible, instead of. I feel like maybe one of the things they're worrying about is, we have to churn out 2 seasons a year, which is why they're saying, we only need to cast, half a season of teams, and then we can say, let's cast a team of all these other wild cards. So I think if there's less pressure on them to only do 1 season a year, as much as they may, bleed a little bit of money in terms of advertising, and Travelocity might be a little miffed, I feel like it could help save things in the long run.
Well, some of those single-digit seasons that we keep lovingly speaking of, those were 1 season a year seasons. So there's precedent.
Yeah, and back to what you said, Jess. If this does like make the show super more popular, that's awesome. I'm not hoping that the ratings aren't good. I just wonder how much of a bump we'll get, like you and Rob talked about in terms of
Hmm.
like Megan and Joey and what that happened. But it's an interesting idea. I think their concern too is if they only do one season, that they could do a great season, then they take a break, and by the time you get back to the fall, they don't get the audience because people have moved on. It's like they have to keep it in front of us as much as possible, so maybe that's their thought. But you're right, it does. When you have to crank out two, they got to cut corners somewhere. If it's in the budget, if it's in the casting, if it's what they do with the course and the planning, and I think we've seen it. So I hope it works out great, and I hope there's like all these people that I like, Instagram models and whatnot, that I had no idea were so, I found myself today looking at Instagram pages and feeling a little weird about it. But it's like, wow, But I'd say maybe some of them are going to be people where in 6 months I'm going to be going, they're one of my favorite teams ever. Who knows,
Yeah, I always leave room for the possibility for someone to be amazing because, if we hadn't had blind date season, we wouldn't have gotten Blaley.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the blind date stuff was definitely one of those. I love it. I love how Rob compared it to Survivor Blood versus Water in terms of like on paper it was a completely reviled concept, but I think the cast made up for it somewhat. I think TAR 26 has not received the universal acclaim that Survivor Blood versus Water has overall, but I think it's still it's better than something like 24. And I think that's akin to how strong the cast has to be. And look, we haven't seen any sort of videos, but for all we know, as much as we may hate the idea of internet celebrities going on these shows, they might. I mean, let's look at what Kevin and Michael from season 17. He was great. I'm not as big fans of Joey and Megan, but they have some sort of appeal. For all we know, as you just said, Dan, these could be really entertaining teams.
Yeah, I'm gonna just look at them as people. I'm not gonna be too bothered by what they're showing off on Instagram. I'm gonna go into it like these are regular teams and it's a regular season. I think that's gonna be a lot more helpful in the end than worrying too much about what the people on the YouTube are saying.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough being in such a day of social media because I agree that it's going to be fun to bring. It could be fun to bring in a new audience. My only problem with it, and this is sort of the problem I have with like bringing in Frankie for a season of Big Brother, is like when you're a hardcore fan of the show, when you have a lot of new casual fans coming in and making their own opinions and postulating their own theories and trying to prove their own expertise, and they're kind of wrong about it, that's a little aggravating to deal with. So as long as like these millions of fans don't come in and say like, well, you should have U-turned this person because they're silly and I don't like them, like that can be their fan bases might be a little aggravating to deal with depending on who the team might be.
Yeah, the last thing I need is I don't need the aggravation of a bunch of like, back in the day when I would, gently make fun of Joey Graceffa, I would have people saying, like, the only people that ever watch this show are people that watch them for Joey, and how dare you make fun of Joey, and you must really hate him. Like, no, I'm making fun of him exactly the same amount of making fun as I do of everybody. So that's the thing I worry about. I don't want their fans to be mobilized against, anybody else that they're competing with or anybody else that might have opinions on the show. So that's always a concern. All right, so you guys have any parting thoughts about this or anything else?
I mean, I think it's been as we said in the beginning, it's been a pretty good season thus far. I mean, I do feel like this is a little bit reminiscent of Cambodia. It's kind of monopolizing the end game of Survivor 30. Granted, we're not having a big public forum. I mean, we are having a public starting line, but we're not going to be probably discussing this as fervently as we did Second Chances. But I'm hoping that this doesn't affect 27's momentum or reputation at all, because I've been moderately enjoying this season. There's a couple teams that I enjoy, and I'm hoping that action really picks up. I hope for entertainment's sake that Justin and Diana get a little bit of a challenge here, but you know what? If they end up slaughtering their way to the finish, I'd be happy with that as well, to see a super fan team really like monopolize this game and take the win.
Yeah. If you're gonna love the game, you know, if you're going to win the game, you should at least love the game. That's how I feel. How about you, Dan? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if I mean I see what you're saying, Mike, and I don't think it's going to be the same as the second chance vote because you know it's a smaller thing. I mean, there's going to be the starting line, but unless you're probably really really dialed into the personalities, it won't be as big a deal. This season, like I said earlier, I was really frustrated this season early on. So I'm happy. I'm enjoying watching it, which is saying something. If you really dig into the course, it's kind of okay. I've been a little surprised by how many people don't like Justin and Diana, and maybe I'm probably coming from I know I'm coming from like a super fan perspective or something, and he can be a little arrogant, but I look at them and I think I'm really excited if they win. And so I don't know. It's just been interesting to me, even among the fans. I feel like they're really divisive, and it surprises me a little bit. And I'm maybe it's just the hat. I don't know, but
Yeah, I do hate the hat. Like, I love the team, hate the hat.
yeah. So I'm excited to see where it goes, but I think they'll probably struggle somewhere, even if they win, because there's still a lot of racing to go.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair. All right, so before we wrap things up, Mike Bloom, where do we find you on the social media?
You can find me at a Mike Bloom type on Twitter, and I am doing all sorts of things. I recently actually just dropped a recap of the Aziz Ansari series Master of None, which is dropped on Netflix last week. Really good. I definitely recommend both of you. Please watch it if you haven't. It's really great. And I will also be appearing on post-show recaps this week, doing some more coverage for Rob. I'm going to be appearing on the SNL recap, covering this most recent episode with Elizabeth Banks, and I'm always around on Twitter, so if you ever want to nerd out about more Amazing Race history, feel free to hit me up. I'm always game for a conversation.
Yeah, and don't worry, we're definitely going to approach you when it comes time to record Amazing Race Historians.
Perfect. It's a role I was born to play. Evolution of Amazing Race strategy. Yeah, it would be the worst. Nobody would listen to that. I wouldn't listen to that. We'd skip like the first 3 seasons, right? Yeah. There really was no strategy. The strategy was run really fast. Yeah, exactly. All right, Dan Heaton, where do we find you on the social media, and what are you up to?
Well, I am on Twitter at the Dan Heaton. It's not arrogant at all. But Dan Heaton was taken. They haven't tweeted in many years. I am also writing about Survivor on RHAP as a website, about strategy. My posts go up every Sunday, and I am really enjoying this season. There is lots and lots to talk about in terms of strategy, which is not always the case with Survivor on certain seasons. But beyond that, yeah, just follow me on Twitter, talking about TV and movies. Master of None is great, though I still have a lot more to watch. So I'm with you, Mike, and come and talk to me about The Amazing Race or Survivor.
Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, Master of None, I'm about 3 episodes in, and I think it's really fantastic. It's like Louis, but it's a little bit less bleak. That's really, I called it, if the stylistic elements of Louis with like a sweet aftertaste. And just wait, it gets even better. Episode 3 was when I really got into it, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I have a whole podcast about it, but like until you get like the latter half of the season, I think specifically is absolutely fantastic. So I definitely recommend all of you listening out there, check it out, listen to our podcast, be merry. Fabulous. All right, so do you guys have any suggestions for what we should give people as a hashtag for this episode? We could do hashtag Monty's Pool Party. I love it. All right, hashtag Monty's Pool Party if you got all the way to the end of this podcast and you want to share that information with the rest of the class. I love it, and I'm in Canada. I'm gonna go see if I can find Monty's Pool Party myself, guys. So I want to thank everybody for listening. You can find me on Twitter at HaymakerHattie, and I'm always down to talk about all things Amazing Race and or Survivor related. And no exit interview this week, and Rob and I will be back next Friday to break it all down for you again, and then next weekend, I'm definitely going to be talking to some ex-racers with some little bonus RHAP-up coverage. Just throwing that out there, guys. So, enjoy your week, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.